They're excited that we're blowing up drug dealers in the middle of the ocean, and they're not talking about Epstein, and they're not talking as much about the economy, and they're not asking to have health care, and they're not asking what Palantir's doing. We're blowing stuff up because it's narco-terrorists, and they're killing your family, and it's like a tried and true method, and it really works.
Tim Dillon just blasted Trump's Venezuela regime change propaganda, the string of lies that are being sold to the American people to justify military intervention, blowing up ships off the coast of Venezuela, and possibly setting the stage for an outright regime change operation soon in that country. And he uses his typical trademark humor in this regard to tell us what this really means, and really gets to the bottom of how the state uses propaganda to swindle the American people that voted for it. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
I just was surprised. Like right now, I'm surprised by how much Venezuela is a threat to us. Again, I didn't know this. I'm a relatively intelligent person. I pay pretty close attention to the news. It's my job. I had no idea that, like, Venezuela was responsible for all of the drugs. I thought it was like, I don't know, Mexico or China or like any of the countries that we had been told were, but you can't start bombing boats in China. 11 U.S. warships and 15,000 troops now in Caribbean as Venezuelan tensions escalate. So here's the thing, folks. A boomer likes to see a video of a boat getting bombed. And there's a narrative, and he's a socialist, and it makes sense. It fits. It's casting, and it works. It works. We need a little bit of something going on, and this works. It's Venezuela. It's perfect.
Yeah, absurd. I mean, obviously, drug runners and narco-terrorism in Venezuela, that's just the new weapons of mass destruction. It's the same playbook from 2002 to 2003 brought forward to justify a new scheme, and Tim's right. Drugs don't come from Venezuela, saying it obviously in his sarcastic tone. Fentanyl doesn't come from there. Cocaine doesn't come from there. I think minuscule amounts moves through there, but it primarily comes from Colombia and Ecuador, and in terms of fentanyl, Mexico. So this is just a scheme that goes beyond what they're selling it as. Americans are starting to see through these lies. I hope that's true, because at hand here is getting American contracts in their markets, through politically connected arrangements to benefit from their energy and oil markets, but it's also about disrupting BRICS' influence, because Venezuela has applied to be a BRICS member alongside China and Russia and all the other CIA boogeymen that we're supposed to be fighting proxy wars against.
It's perfect. Drugs are a big problem. Drug addicts are stabbing their parents in Long Island delis. We know it's a problem. And this kind of allows us to do what we do. The American government, it barely functions. People got to realize that. It doesn't function really. It closes. There's, the shutdown happens. People are in feuds all the time. Interest groups are fighting over who owns what politician. I mean, the government is, listen, it's not to say that our country doesn't function. Our country functions. But getting legislation passed through the government, anyone will tell you this, is like near impossible. Unless it's something like the big, beautiful bill. Nobody even knows what that is.
Well, I'll push back against him a little bit. I mean, there is a lot of bipartisanism, and by bipartisanism, I generally mean the party of stupid and the party of evil. You decide which is which, collaborate to do things that are both stupid and both evil. And I would argue that the government functions too much to rob us of our liberty, infringe upon our civil liberties, get involved in endless wars, expand the welfare state, keep rigid schemes that line the pockets of the best connected lobbies in Washington greased, while the United States, Americans themselves actually suffer. That is how it really functions, outside of a few exceptions.
They just know that Sam Altman got a lot of money. A bunch of people get thrown off Medicare. ICE gets a lot of money. Any political movement eventually has two parts. It has the part where there's what's actually happening, and then the part, it's the show. The show. And when
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth tweets, Franklin targets narco-terrorists, everyone knows someone with a drug problem. It's a great narrative. It's a great narrative. We're blowing up boat. People like it. It's the holidays. It's December. It's cold. People are in there on their couch. They're watching TV, and they're blowing up a boat. So let's watch a little bit of this to just see what we're even talking about here.
Tonight, President Trump defending striking a boat allegedly carrying drugs to the U.S. twice in early September.
I want those boats taken out. And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And there's very little coming in by sea. I think we've knocked out over 90% of it.
2 people initially survived, and the administration says the decision for a second strike, killing all on board, was made by Admiral Frank Bradley. Today, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said even though he watched the first part of the attack live, he'd moved on to his next meeting before the second strike.
Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water.
Just think about that. A threat? These boats would have to refuel, depending on the type of boat, 15 to 20 times to get into the United States. They probably, some of them don't have drugs, and these people are not a threat militarily to the United States. Venezuela doesn't want to fight with the United States. In fact, Maduro has gotten on the phone with the president and said, we'll give you the oil. I'll step down after this arrangement in which, in return, officials in the Venezuelan government get some immunity, and Trump's turned it down. Why? Because it goes deeper than what they're saying. It's not narco-terrorism. And by the way, that's combining the worst aspects of 2 abstractions. The war on terror, which I'm sorry, terrorists won based on the behavior of the United States. It's weakened the United States throughout the world, compounded our debt and inflation. And the war on drugs, which, again, I'm sorry to say that drugs won. Prohibition doesn't work to do what you want. And it's not a threat in terms of disseminating drugs. The fentanyl and cocaine isn't coming in from Venezuela, but they just sell you this mountain of lies every single time.
You didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It's exploded in fire or smoke. You can't
It's
see
on
any
fire.
This is called the fog of war.
Right. The fog of what they loved it. Listen, it's just what we got to do as a country. It's just what we got to do. You can't get angry at it. Can't even get mad at it. Yes, it's a war crime. It's whatever. It's what we do. It's December. It's the holidays. No,
He's right. I mean, it's so ironic, and I love Tim. He cracks me up. But war crimes is just another day in the United States. That's how sad that this situation is for American citizens, where our foreign policy is just a long string of war crimes and targeting these people in a condition that is, an act of war. It is something that isn't beholden to American values. It doesn't respect due process. It doesn't even respect typical Coast Guard arrangements where ships are searched once they get to port. And the Coast Guard says they have about a 3/4 chance of finding drugs on these ships. But 1/4 is a lot of a wiggle room there to say that you're killing a lot of innocent people potentially. And there's not even drugs coming from Venezuela. So the whole thing's a farce. The whole thing's an absurdity. This double tap war crime was exactly that.
this is what we're going to do. There's a decision made to just start bombing. We need to start, but something's got to get bombed. I mean, truly, when the Epstein stuff's going down and all this stuff is going down, someone up there goes, we need to start bombing someone like now. We need to pivot people's attention from the economy and the pedophile ring we're covering up to Venezuela. Let's start blowing up boats. Who cares? They're narco-terrorists. Great. We'll blow them up. And it'll pivot. And even this is good. Even this war crime thing is good, because what this allows is everyone can fight about this. It's just, I've lived through this forever. I'm sorry that I don't feel any way about it. I mean, you can't, day in and day out, you can't consume this stuff and still care. There's no way to do it at 40. You'd have to be so crazy. You'd have to be so crazy at 40 to still have an emotional investment in that. is just what it is. We're just blowing up. But this is what happens here. Have you not lived here? Are you new? Are you 5? We're blowing stuff up because narco terrorists and they're killing your family and fentanyl and crack, whatever you really, whatever you need to believe here, whatever works, whatever fits, whatever narrative fits, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Tim and his trademark humor makes it absurd in so many ways to look at this as if no one cares and you're literally killing people on boats. But he's right. This generation has lived through it. If you're a Gen Xer, if you're a millennial, you've seen essentially your entire life consumed by warfare. Warfare and military operations and regime change schemes and wars on behalf of Israel and funding a genocide, funding a proxy war versus Russia, changing out the government in Syria on behalf of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's all we've seen. And he's right. There's things they actually do, and how they sell that is not what the genuine reason is for their actions. And you can see this in so many regards. And it just becomes too hard to swallow from the typical American perspective when all it is war propaganda. We see it time and time again, just kind of modified slightly to meet the current arrangement. And he's right, the Overton window among the American foreign policy regime, it goes from which country we're going to bomb. It's either going to be Venezuela or Ukraine or Russia or Iran or Syria or Libya or Iraq or Afghanistan. It could be any of those. It can't be, why don't we just don't bomb countries? Why don't we just don't engage in empire building schemes? That's never part of the arrangement. It's never a question of whether or not we bomb a country. It's which country we're going to bomb. And I hate to say that's true about all presidential administrations in my lifetime. And I don't think that you're going to vote your way out of it as long as the Washington lobbies still exist in the current state that they do.
It's a Bill Hicks joke where he goes, it's like he's a Hitler and whatever you need. It's like, this is the game we play. This is the game we play. It's like a tried and true method, and it really works. It really, really works. And kudos. Forget the morality of it. It's not what we're here to analyze. That's not what we're doing. We're actually just looking at this going, kudos. Good job. Who's ever in there pushing this, you know your audience, and you know it will work. And it is working. In Long Island right now, and many suburbs like it, the people whose children haven't killed them are watching Fox News, and they are seeing, or MSNBC, by the way, and they're either going, war criminal, or they're excited that we're blowing up drug dealers in the middle of the ocean, and they're not talking about Epstein, and they're not talking about whatever the hell else is in these documents that may or may not come out, redacted or unredacted, and they're not talking as much about the economy.
Yeah, he's right. It is a diversionary tactic. I'll push back a little bit. I think more and more Americans are waking up to what this really is after seeing such a long stream of war propaganda in their lives. Some of them do still buy it. A lot of demographics, especially those that follow corporate media, do still buy it. But a lot of the independent media is showing this facade, this charade, this absurdity on behalf of the military-industrial complex for what it is. People are starting to wake up in some regard in ways that they couldn't have possibly done before. There were always anti-war dissidents before, but now it's just on display, and you can see in real time what's actually playing out in front of you and the motives behind it in video form and on the internet and on social media, and then compare that to the propaganda, and it just doesn't align for a lot of people. So yeah, it does work, and they know they need it. They need to rely on the war propaganda because no one elected Trump to bomb Caracas. No one elected Trump to regime change Venezuela. But Trump put duplicitous people around him like Marco Rubio that have always wanted that forever. And that's why they tried to do this in 2019 by installing Juan Guaido in Venezuela. That's something a lot of people don't know. But there was no mandate for that. No one voted for Trump on that. He didn't run for that. He didn't mention that in the campaign. It's just part of this scheme that once you get in office, due to electoral scams, you can just do this, and many Americans won't care. But it is an issue of morality for sure. And Tim's being facetious here, but it is certainly a matter of morality.
And they're not asking to have health care, and they're not asking what Palantir's doing, and they're not asking why 5 tech guys in AI control half the American economy in San Francisco. They're not asking any of that. They're just watching a boat blow up in the middle of the ocean. And good kudos. Good job. You know your audience, and this is exactly what had to be done. This is exactly what had to be done. This is the type of stuff that people like.
Oh, yeah. Just totally love it. Knocked it out of the park. It is a distraction. It is, unfortunately, a part of a foolhardy U.S. policy plan that basically is applied to every theater of the world. If it's not the Middle East, it's in Israel, it's Eastern Europe in the form of Ukraine. If it's not empire building in Eastern Europe, it's empire building in the Pacific with a new national defense strategy document that Elbridge Colby drafted that says how many resources are going to be poured into empire building in the East China Sea and South China Sea and the First Islands, and that we're going to maintain this policy of not allowing China to invade Taiwan, taking all the worst lessons that we did learn from Ukraine and possibly creating a new Ukraine per se in Taiwan and producing a new proxy war against another nuclear power. If it's not East Asia, it's Central America, South America with Venezuela. Empire building schemes all around. No Americans asking for this except for a small niche group of blood-soaked neocon maniacs that have always made this part of the Washington foreign policy regime since especially the early 2000s when the neocons took power, when the Richard Pearls and Paul Wolfowitzes and David Frums and Norman Podhoritzes of the world. He might have been dead by that time, but the neocons in kind took power and operations of the United States foreign policy regime. And I hate to say, that scheme's been co-opted by the liberal establishment under Obama and Biden. Obama started wars in Syria and Libya, ramped up the drone war in Yemen, started a starvation blockade in Yemen that still goes on today, continued the war in Somalia, that one still goes on too. Then you had Biden entering into a proxy war versus Russia. It just goes on and on and on. There's never the question of keeping us out of war. In Trump's term, he exacerbated conflicts in both Syria and Yemen. He ramped up bombing in Afghanistan for a time. He tried to overthrow Venezuela in 2019 as well, installing Juan Guaido. We just get the same policies no matter what. And yeah, I do think some Americans are waking up to it. Not enough. We need more Americans waking up to it to know that politicians can't just get away with this forever. Like, we just won't accept it anymore. And I think that's starting to happen, especially in regard with Israel, with so much of a swing against supporting Israel and all the measures that do that. And it just becomes too glaring when people like Mike Huckabee meet with a convicted Israeli spy who took documents out of our national security regime and sent it over to Israel, which, by the way, many of those secrets were sent to the Soviets at the height of the Cold War, by the way. And we're just going to let Mike Huckabee get away with meeting him and having a meeting with that duplicitous, evil scoundrel, Jonathan Pollard. And Trump pardoned his handler, so no problem there either, the last day of his first term. But yeah, the Venezuela regime change operation, it goes deeper, far deeper than the story that they tell us. It's not narco-terrorism. Fentanyl and cocaine doesn't come from Venezuela. These ships were not going to dock in port. And if they dock in port, to avoid a war crime, you just search them. You just have the Coast Guard search them and find drugs if they find them. These boats couldn't have gotten to America. They just serve the purpose of propaganda. And Pete Hegseth on camera saying, I told our warriors in the military to ignore the rules of engagement, i.e. to produce war crimes. That's what you're getting out of this administration. It's never going to stop unless Americans stop trusting this foreign policy regime. They start supporting measures locally like Defend the Guard Act, which would withhold all U.S. soldiers in the reserve, in the National Guard, from being called up to be deployed for unconstitutional, undeclared wars. That's a great local legislative plan you can get behind. We need more education campaigns to expose the lunacy and propaganda. And I'm glad we have people here like Tim Dillon that cover this in a way that I don't. That cover this in a way that Jeff Sachs doesn't, and Douglas McGregor doesn't, and John Mearsheimer doesn't, where it's humor and it's exposing the deepest and darkest of these lunatic fringe foreign policy acolytes in Washington, D.C., where it's war no matter what, lead through bombing, not through diplomacy, and blow up whatever you can. And whatever you can't blow up, sanction the rest, and try to regime change the rest. That's what we get under Washington foreign policy. But what do you guys think? Do you think Tim Dillon is right? Are you detecting his style of humor here and exposing it, where we're just supposed to throw morality to the wayside and give them props for blowing up boats? Is that going to be enough for a lot of people to support this? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Tim Dillon. He's awesome. Love Tim. Always covers these stories from an angle that I don't have the talent to, but is worthy of consideration, I think. So protect that man at all costs. And if you like this video or my take, please consider joining as a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below, and if you do that, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on my channel, so you'll be able to see those members only videos immediately if you support me in that way, and I really appreciate it if you do. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. It'll shoot you off to a website. You just plug in your email and I'll send you a copy of that book free of charge in PDF form, just because I appreciate you watching. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.